All right, let's fast forward. It's game week. It's a big one. Um, I feel like this is one of the rare times where the storyline will not be about Nebraska going in a game like this, right? It'll be very Indiana-ish driven. You think that's good for Nebraska to be in this spot? They're already a 6-point underdog.
Yeah, I think it is a good spot. I think Nebraska needs to. It will help to clarify Nebraska's focus. It will help that because they have to feel like they're going in as an underdog that will have no fans in the stadium, and they'll have a few, but that's how they have to go into this. They have to feel like they're going into an arena and just survival, them against the world.
Mm.
So there's some benefit here.
Yeah, they're good. They're good at that.
Everybody, yeah, I'm sure they are.
That's their coach, right? I mean, that's Coach Rule.
Yeah.
He'd rather fight than probably give you a hug. You know what I mean? Like he wants it probably chaotic.
Right, and so the Purdue game was challenging in that way because you knew you weren't going into a hostile atmosphere, overly hostile. And this week it's gonna. I mean, there's no question that their fans are going to be really juiced up, and Indiana's a good team. And Rule will probably say this today, Indiana's team knows how to win. Mm-hmm. That seems ironic, but a lot of the guys are from James Madison. So there are a bunch of guys he brought over that won a lot of football games. And so they don't know anything different. They know how to win, and Nebraska's still learning how. And so this is an important game. This is an opportunity for Nebraska to win. And again, I know kind of how the local media is about things of like, hey, it's year two, and take a bowl and run with it and all the rest. But, people are going to look at Indiana and they're going to say, well, that's Indiana. And are you telling me that Indiana is better than Nebraska? Like that's the mindset's going to be. And Saturday is an opportunity to determine that. Like Nebraska fans are tired of falling behind the flavor of the week because Nebraska hasn't been the flavor of the week for a decade. Mm-hmm. And so like, Nebraska doesn't get to be the flavor of the week. Indiana's the flavor of the week. And if Indiana wins on Saturday, then, Indiana gets to be the fun story. Nebraska, once again, gets to be the we're always building the runway team. And because Ohio State's going to be so pissed off, nobody's even going to know what to do when Ohio State goes out there on October 26th. So Nebraska's the next 2 weeks are going to be very, very challenging. And Nebraska has to be up for the challenge, and we'll see. The offense has to be up for the challenge, and we'll see how it goes.
I think Ohio State has bigger fish to fry, but that'll be for next week. Something's wrong, in my opinion, with their cohesiveness, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
That may be true, but I don't know that Nebraska can.
No, I get it. It's a separate.
Yeah. I'm not sure that Nebraska's the team to do that. Nebraska's going to have to play absolutely outstanding. Penn State can do that. I don't know if Nebraska can. Like, again, go back and watch a good portion of all 6 games. And Nebraska's offense just has to take it up a notch. The defense obviously needs to stay good, and the special teams is sort of a wild card, but the offense has to get better. The tests in the second half of the season are going to be way tougher, and Nebraska's offense cannot do what it did in the first half against Purdue or for the second half against Rutgers and expect that to be a good enough to win many games.
We're talking with Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, if there was a specific facet of the offense you'd like to see kick it up a notch, what would that be?
The skill players, not other than Raiola. Well, Raiola too, but again, we have to be – I'm always context. And the context is Dylan Raiola is a true freshman who's got 6 games in his career. And if you look at his numbers and you compare it to other true freshmen that played over the last 5, 6, 7 years, there's only a couple of guys ahead of him. And that's Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams. They're really, the stats just don't suggest that he's behind the curve at all. It suggests that he's ahead of it. And that's because most of the blue chip true freshmen don't go to schools like Nebraska. They go to schools where they can sit for a year, which he would have done at Georgia. But Nebraska didn't sit him. They played him right away. And at Oklahoma, Caleb Williams was pressed into action, and then Jaden Daniels went to Arizona State, another one of those schools where you don't sit. And so Raiola's ahead of the curve. You can't assume that he's going to become, I don't know, whomever over the next 6 weeks and just assume that. So I think your receivers have to continue to keep coming, and your running backs do too. You got to break more tackles, got to get open, got to make more plays. I think Nebraska's offensive line plays hard. They do. They do. They play hard. They try hard. They're not bad in pass protection. Asking that offensive line to be significantly better when you're playing Gunnar Gatula, who's doing this for the first time, just seems like a overreach to me. Maybe Micah Mazuka can get back into the starting lineup. I'm not exact. Damon probably knows more than I do about the whole dynamic between he's a backup, but whatever Rule's saying there is obviously between Rule and Mazuka, but I think Mazuka's a pretty good player, and hopefully he can get back in the starting lineup.
Sam, if we think that Nebraska's leaving points out on the field, which kind of was the consensus, right, over the last handful of weeks. This in the second, there, and we kind of agreed, and I've yet to ask you do you agree that it's somewhere so far between 10 and 14 points, higher or lower for you?
Yeah, those are fair numbers.
Okay.
10 or 14 is okay.
So if you just mentioned Raiola in 6 games, and Barney's played 6 games, and Gatula's still young, and Banks and Nair have played 6 games with this offense. Is it safe? Is it a reach? Do you feel comfortable saying, as time goes on, that number will come down, or with just experience and situational awareness, or the schedule, in your opinion, won't allow that to be the case?
That number could come down, and simultaneously Nebraska could score fewer points because the schedule is a little tougher on the back end.
You're probably okay with scoring fewer points if you feel like you're not leaving them out there, right? Like that's a different feeling.
Right. It means you're controlling the clock and doing some of the things that you want to do. And even if you're scoring 24 points, maybe those are winning some games for you. Yeah, absolutely. There's an opportunity to do that. I think the thing that I'm kind of watching for, I'll give you an example. I know Penn State beat USC, and I appreciate everything that offensive coordinator's doing, but they had to run literally every stinking play in their playbook. And I credit them for doing that because they knew what they had to do to win that game. They knew what they had to do.
Sam, Allen ran for 56 yards. Aller threw the ball to the other team 3 times. Penn State ran for 118 yards.
Yeah.
And they won.
They won because they ran everything they could. But my point is that if you watch USC, and granted, they lost 3 games, and I get it. When I watch USC, I'm like, that offense makes internal sense to USC. You can tell that everybody on that field kind of knows what they're doing. Now, they didn't win the game, and they didn't execute the clock stuff, but when they run the ball, they know what they want to do when they run the ball, and when they throw it, the quarterback knows what he wants to do. He doesn't always work, but that's what I mean about, making sense. And I think Nebraska does a really nice job of scheming up plays that turn out to be really, really good. I think Satterfield's a good play designer, and he has a knack for calling a big play when you need it. I would love to see Nebraska settle more into, here are the set of plays we're going to do. This is who we're going to be. We're going to get really, really good at that, and Dylan's going to get really, really good at this. And then if we got to have a wrinkle off of that, we will. And so we'll see if Nebraska reaches that level of identity. To be honest with you, I haven't seen that identity often with Nebraska's offense, in the Frost era or in the Rule era. There's been a lot of pick a play, like, well, we got a big play for you, and it works sometimes, and it's valuable. But I would love to see Nebraska get just a core identity on offense. Like, here's what we're going to do, here's how we're going to run it, then we're going to do this off of this, and if it doesn't work, we're just going to go back and get better at that. And because we're gonna be who we're gonna be. That's
how I kind of feel when I watch them run like duo and stuff. Like I can see the plays. You know what I don't
Sure.
want to ask a leading question. I think I can I can see what they want to do. I do, especially in the run game. How about this? How about if you talk about leaving plays out on the field? How about if with a little more experience, Dylan gets rid of the ball, and I won't say takes a few more chances because that sounds like, he's out here riverboat gambling. But there are some pass plays, I think, that are out there to be made where I just think right now he's just valuing the football, which is okay for a young guy. But at some point, he'll cut those balls loose. There's some give and take there, in my opinion. I think what Nebraska's trying to do versus what I think a young quarterback is willing to do.
Sure. And I think, a good example of maybe a growth curve would be what Drew Aller's doing at Penn State. He made some mistakes, but, I think he has a much better sense of what he wants to do with the ball. And he's completing passes. And people talked about how he's thrown so few interceptions, Aller that is, but a lot of times it's because he was holding on to the ball. And he wouldn't throw it into harm's way. And people who watch the sport a lot understand that one of the special things about it, for example, a Mahomes, is he's willing. Good quarterbacking is throwing touchdowns. That is, when you get to the NFL, touchdown passes is what matters more than completion percentage, or you got to throw touchdowns.
Yeah, I see it every week with Jordan Love, who throws more touchdown passes per game than any quarterback in the NFL. Any quarterback in the NFL per game, Jordan Love, 2.7. He threw 4 yesterday.
He likes to throw, and that's good. That's part of what makes a quarterback good. And so Dylan's just got to keep getting there. Where it's you're willing to throw the pass because you trust the arm, and you're willing to do some of the things that you can do. And again, we could rehash years and years of quarterbacking. There's obviously things that people wish that Nebraska didn't do or did do. You go back to 2015, and that was the first year of Mike Riley, and my goodness, they threw touchdowns, they threw interceptions, they did all kinds of crazy stuff that season. They generated a lot of yards.
I just think there's going to be this point where, with him, because Dylan is so talented, where instead of just, and it's not getting by. So hear my heart, it's we're in a spot now where I can take this. I can take a chance. Yeah. Right now, I just think there's still a little.
They need to get there.
Well, it's a little fast. Kinda. Yeah. I don't know. We may not agree on that.
I just don't. I think his learning curve needs to be respected, and it can't be all on him. They got to get a bit better at the backs and the receivers. Guys got to get open. They got to help him out a little bit, just a little bit.
That's Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, we appreciate the time as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Good stuff, Sam.
Take care.